formally open the Estimates Committee again, where we will consider the Department of Trade, Business and Asian Relations. I welcome you, Minister, to today's hearings and invite you to introduce the officials accompanying you.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I'm very pleased to introduce officials from the Department of Trade, Business and Asian Relations who are appearing with me here today. Chief Executive Officer Hayley Richards, Deputy Chief Executive Officer Kelly Ralston and Chief Financial Officer Joanna Frankenfeld. And I'll introduce other senior officials as required for ease of reference.
Thank you, Minister. I will invite you to make a brief opening statement. I will then call for questions relating to the statement. The committee will then consider any whole-of-government budget and fiscal strategy related questions before moving on to output-specific questions. I will invite the Shadow Minister to ask their questions first, followed by committee members. Finally, other participating members may ask questions. The committee has agreed that other members may join in on a line of questioning pursued by a Shadow Minister rather than waiting for the end of the Shadow's questioning on the output. Can I also remind everyone when you are speaking to please push the button on so it can be recorded. Minister, I invite you to make an opening statement regarding the Department of Trade, Business and Asian Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But before I begin, I would just very much like to thank CEO of the department, Hayley Richards, for her dedication, leadership and management of the department and her team in the preparation for estimates. It's a lot of time and effort to do this work, and I'm very grateful for the work that's been put into this and thank them for their support. So turning now to the 25-26 budget, the CLP government has three main priorities that Territorians voted us in to deliver, those being reducing crime, rebuilding the economy and restoring our unique Territory lifestyle. And my portfolios have a vital part to play in these three areas. And it has been my honour, Mr. Chair, to represent Territory businesses as the Minister for Trade, Business and Asian Relations over the past 9 months. I spent my first few months listening to business. I've met with businesses and hosted roundtables across the Territory in Alice Springs, Tennant Creek, Katherine, Nhulunbuy and Darwin, and wherever I go, I make time to meet and speak with owners, staff and customers of businesses across the Territory. The message has been loud and clear. Businesses want change and they need change. Since coming to government, we have been unwavering in our focus on our three key priorities. These are all linked. Without reducing crime, our lifestyle doesn't improve, and without improving our lifestyle, attracting the people we need to realise the incredible opportunities here in the Northern Territory is an even more challenging task. When we came to government, we established the new department, the Department of Trade, Business and Asian Relations. And this department is focused on strengthening Territory businesses and creating an environment for businesses to thrive, attracting investment to grow and realise our potential, and finally secure the workforce we need now and into the future. And in just 9 months, Mr. Chair, significant progress has been made, and I'd like to acknowledge the hardworking staff who contribute tirelessly to supporting Territory businesses every day across all of our regions. Small to medium businesses are the engine room of the Northern Territory economy. They are the drivers of job creation, innovation and economic diversification. 95% of businesses in the Territory are classified as small businesses. They employ over 40,000 people. As at June 2024, the Territory had 16,380 operating businesses. As we rebuild the Territory economy, it's critical that we have a thriving business sector. Supporting business is at the core of the agency's purpose and priorities, and significant reforms are underway and are already delivering, including the payroll tax cuts that make it so much easier for businesses to grow and for apprentices to be taken on. Building licensing and a suite of other reforms are underway to make it easier for business to conduct business. And we have digitised services currently being delivered by our Territory Business Centres so businesses can progress applications at their convenience. These changes improve the environment for business and make it easier to succeed. I will continue to tirelessly drive change to ensure our environment is the best in the country for business, including acting on all the feedback I've received at my industry roundtables on procurement. We don't just deliver programs, we also listen, learn and act. The department is working closely with businesses to identify red tape, address structural challenges and develop reform initiatives that reduce complexity and enable sustainable growth. We are reforming government procurement policy to make it simpler, more transparent and more accessible to Territory-based businesses. Our aim is to boost local participation while delivering better value and outcomes for the community. We continue to back local businesses through government procurement. Government contracts are worth on average $1.5 billion annually. Since 1 July 24 to the end of March 25, the Territory Government awarded 859 contracts at Tier 2 or above, valued at $850 million. $711 million was awarded to Territory enterprises. $129 million was awarded to Aboriginal enterprises. Looking ahead, we are developing an ambitious reform program that will make it simpler, easier and more efficient for both business and government to undertake procurement activities. We are focused on cutting red tape and making it easier for local businesses to get on with their projects and services and catalyse local employment opportunities. We're reviewing our programs to ensure the support we provide to local businesses is contemporary and delivers the best value to the Territory. We're not going to just do things because that's what we've always done. Since the 1st of July 2024, more than 580 local businesses have accessed $4.6 million in grant funding to grow, diversify and reinforce their businesses. We're also supporting Territory businesses to grow and be more resilient through the Business Security and Safety Audit and the Business Security and Assistance Program. Regional delivery is essential for our businesses. In each of our regions, the department has teams working tirelessly for businesses in those regions. Territory Business Centres provide a one-stop shop for advice and assistance to businesses and the general public on a range of topics including licensing and registration, government grants and other general business-related queries. We're making it even easier to do business at the centres with the implementation of a new online ID verification system, saving applicants time and getting on with the job more quickly, and commencement of accepting and issuing temporary traffic management cards on behalf of civil services, cutting down the wait time for applicants receiving their licence. Between 1 July and 31 March 2025 for the Territory Business Centre, there were 20,109 call centre calls, 34,938 emails, 10,282 in-person application lodgements, 11,714 licence ID cards issued and 1,371 applications lodged online. Our on-the-ground regional business advisors are delivering targeted support and engagement to ensure businesses understand how to access grants and programs to achieve sustainable growth, capability, resilience and competitiveness. They work closely with regional towns and remote communities to assist with current and future workforce and business needs, support businesses develop their workforce through the Flexible Skills and Training Response Program, provide support through the Community-Based Childcare Program, deliver Boosting Business in the Bush and Jobs and Training Expos through the Barkly and Central Australian regions, and deliver the popular October Business Month, encouraging Territory businesses and employees to learn new skills, undertake professional development and build local networks. In the aviation sector, the CLP has been working hard to improve aviation access to the Territory with several new services announced this year. We absolutely recognise that aviation access supports the backbone of both our trade and tourism industry, and it's vital for essential travel such as health and education, a pathway for people moving here to live, work and study. In the last 9 months, we've seen unprecedented growth in connectivity, choice and competition, with the launch of 4 new direct services to key domestic and international markets. AirAsia Darwin to Bali, AirAsia Darwin to Malaysia, Jetstar Darwin to Gold Coast, and Air North Alice Springs to Cairns. 3 of these new routes have been supported by the Territory Government's Territory Aviation Attraction Scheme. The TAS allows airports to target new routes that will expand aviation connectivity and access affordable airfares. That's why the Territory Government has committed funding to support the TAS until 2028. And we're working with airlines to support commercial decisions that will benefit Territorians. Qantas commenced a direct service between Darwin and Singapore, allowing choice of 2 airlines flying into one of the world's biggest aviation hubs. Qantas Group announced 95,000 new seats for the Northern Territory in 2025, up 11% for the same time last year. And Virgin Australia added almost 15,000 seats on its Brisbane to Darwin and Melbourne to Darwin routes. Increased aviation capacity and connectivity will grow our visitor economy, rebuild the Territory economy and restore our lifestyle. There are significant opportunities as well for economic growth in the Territory, particularly through development of our supply chain sector in significant industries like gas, mining, agriculture, tourism and defence. The full economic benefit of large-scale resource project is not limited to just the construction phase. Ongoing operation and maintenance of these projects generate enormous economic opportunities for the Territory. Service and supply spending of offshore and onshore gas developments, for example, the Beetaloo and Amadeus subbasins, could deliver hundreds of millions of dollars to the local economy each year. Through industry and trade delegations, we're positioning Territory businesses to take advantage of these opportunities to enhance industry capability and capacity. Ensuring Territory-based businesses and workers are well placed to service these supply chains is critical to the Territory's ongoing economic growth. Ensuring Territory-based businesses and workers are well placed to service these supply chains is also critical. Territory businesses already deliver critical services across energy, mining and defence, demonstrating resilience and cross-sector agility. But there is room to further develop and increase local participation, support advanced manufacturing and build a competitive future-ready local supply chain across industries. This is the future that I want to see for the Territory. In relation to workforce and population, as at December 2024, the Territory had 139,105 employed individuals with an unemployment rate of 4.3%. As at August 2024, the 5 largest employing industries in the Territory were healthcare and social assistance with 26,000 employees, public administration and safety with 21,500 employees, education and training 14,200 employees, construction 10,700 employees, and retail trade 10,500 employees. The highest youth, 15 to 24-year-old age sector, employment sectors constitute 17.8% in accommodation and food services, 15.3% in retail trade, 15.1% in public administration and safety, and 10.1% in the healthcare and social assistance sector. The highest employment sectors... Thank you, Siri. Highest employment sectors for individuals aged 55 and over were 18% in public administration and safety, 14.8% in the healthcare and social assistance sectors, and 11.8% in education and training. Employment is forecast to grow by 1.2% in 24-25, 0.8% in 25-26, and up to 1.6% by 27-28. To attract the workforce, increasing the supply of workers to meet demand will be critical to deliver employment, economic and population growth. The Whanokiraua's CLP government is delivering on its commitment of 2025 being a year of action, certainty and security by assisting Territory businesses to recruit and retain overseas workers. We will deliver an annual $2 million package over the next 2 years to attract workers and international students to the Northern Territory, growing both our population and our economy. Across Australia and around the world, there is intense competition for skilled workers. The Territory faces unique workforce challenges, including remoteness, a small population, a limited talent pool, and strong national and global competition for skilled workers. These challenges are felt more acutely in sectors such as hospitality, healthcare, aged care, trades, and agriculture. The Territory requires an additional 14,200 workers by 2030, around 2,800 new workers per year to meet economic demands. We've established the Office of Workforce Development to focus on building initiatives that grow, attract and retain the workforce that the Territory needs now and into the future. The Global Worker Attraction Initiative remains in market to position the Territory as a preferred destination for skilled workers. By raising the awareness of the Territory's unique lifestyle, opportunities and career prospects, the Worker Attraction Initiative delivers another pathway for employers to access the workforce they need. The Worker Connect online platform remains an important tool connecting local, national and international job seekers with employers in the Territory. To date, almost 14,000 job seekers have signed up to the Jobs platform. Online seminars delivered alongside industry to the UK, Ireland and South Africa attracted more than 2,000 registrants interested in learning more about living and working here in the Territory. We will continue to advocate with the Australian Government to ensure the Territory's interests are recognised and implemented in migration policies that reflect our unique context. The Office of Workforce Development is helping to identify skill shortages, shape policies to improve workforce outcomes and advocate for the Territory's workforce needs. A new strategic framework will be delivered in late 2025 to identify employment pathways, workforce participation, attraction and retention opportunities. The 2025 NT Skilled Occupation Priority List will also be available from Q3 this year, identifying occupational shortages to assist government to prioritise funding for apprentices and trainees. The Pacific Australia Labour Mobility Scheme, or the PALM scheme, will continue to deliver targeted partnerships with the Australian Government to help strengthen workforce capacity and capabilities, in our regions. Earlier this year, it was my pleasure to meet early childhood educators from Papua New Guinea, participating in a pilot project deploying educators into childcare, learning centres in Katherine and Alice Springs, right where we need them. In skilled migration for 24-25, the Territory was allocated 1,600 skilled visa nominations, including family members. This means up to 3,000 new Territorians. For the period 1 July 24 to March 2025, a total of 1,229 skilled workers were issued nominations in key sectors such as accommodation and food services, healthcare and social assistance, professional, scientific and technical services, construction and financial and insurance services. Top source countries include Nepal, India, China, Sri Lanka and Vietnam. The NT Designated Area Migration Migration Agreement 3, the DAMA scheme, was signed on the 19th of March this year. It's a targeted, bespoke regional migration solution developed to address the Territory's specific workforce challenges. The new NT DAMA Mark III delivers a record 325 eligible occupations across all skill levels, an expanded annual cap of 1,500 places, streamlined 5-year endorsement for businesses, concessions for salary, age and English, and flexible pathways to permanent residency. We'll continue to advocate with the Australian Government to ensure the Territory's interests are recognised and implemented in migration policies that reflect our unique context. The Territory Government also values the significant contribution of the international education and training sector and international students to the Territory, and we're committed to growing the number of international students choosing the Territory to study, live and work. International education is a significant contributor to the Territory economy, with each student estimated to contribute $41,841 to the economy each year. International education was the second largest export in the Territory in 2023, generating $236.5 million in export revenue. International education is also the Territory's sixth largest export. Attracting higher numbers of international students to the Territory is a key focus to diversify and rebuild our economy and to build a bigger, better workforce. As at December 2024, there were 5,664 international students enrolled with Territory education providers. We want to see this number grow, so we will continue to advocate with our local international education sector to the Australian Government to ensure certainty in relation to Australian Government policy settings. Critical to rebuilding the economy is facilitating private sector investment, increasing trade and securing the workers we need. The work the department undertakes to attract private sector investment, attract workers and students, and ensuring we have a strong business community is important for improving our economic outlook. Global uncertainty presents both challenges and opportunities, and we must continue to adapt to remain a competitive place to invest, work, live and study. The Territory's trade and investment initiatives are tailored to adapt to changing global dynamics. Shifting global supply chains and efforts to de-risk from over-concentrated markets gives the Territory a chance to position itself as a reliable trade and investment partner, particularly for critical minerals, energy security and defence supply chains. After Labor dismantled the Asian relations portfolio and weakened our ties with key regional partners, the CLP government is restoring these vital relationships, recognising the strategic and economic importance of strong, respectful engagement with our closest neighbours. The CLP government is renewing connections with our Asian neighbours by engaging with both government and industry to build lasting partnerships and promote investment opportunities in the Territory. Opportunities that were long overlooked under the previous Labor government. For the Territory to grow and prosper, we must again advocate for the opportunities and the advantage the Northern Territory presents. The Territory government's Asian engagement activities are focused on improving the lives of Territorians. We build enduring relationships with our Asian neighbours that translate into jobs, business growth and investment attractions. In 2024, we signed a Critical Minerals Memorandum of Understanding with Indonesia, a vital step in positioning the Territory as a key supplier of strategic minerals to global markets. In May 2025, we hosted a major mining delegation from Indonesia to support immediate commercial opportunities flowing from that MOU. We have made significant progress towards implementation of our strategic partnership agreement with Timor-Leste, further strengthening people-to-people economic and governmental ties. Inbound and outbound delegations are a necessary part of Asian engagement. Face-to-face interaction is culturally important and essential to building trust and rapport. It's an investment into stronger economic relationships, more trade and a more prosperous Territory. I have led 3 high-level outbound trips to progress international engagement. I was in Timor-Leste from the 7th to the 8th of November 2024, Indonesia from the 17th to the 23rd of February 2025, and Singapore from the 30th of March to the 2nd of April 2025. It's essential that the Territory maintains these key relationships to secure strong economic outcomes for Territorians. To coincide with the inaugural flight connecting Kuala Lumpur to Darwin, the first non-stop route to Malaysia in almost a decade, I will travel to progress vital engagement opportunities, trade, international students and investment. Later this year, the Northern Territory Government will travel with businesses to the World Expo in 2025 in Osaka, Japan. The World Expo offers significant opportunities to engage with influential trade and investment audiences and grow in-market literacy for emerging businesses looking to enter into new markets. In addition to ramping up international engagement in Asia, the Northern Territory Government is leading efforts to accelerate investment and intensify trade. This includes identifying and optimising strategic opportunities, centralising investment lead management and establishing systems and processes to support consistent investor reporting, performance, tracking and pipeline visibility. As at the 15th of May 2025, the Territory Government had an active private investor-led pipeline of 75 projects at a median capital expenditure value of $300 million, including mining, energy, agriculture, defence, space and digital projects. From the 15th to 17th of July this year, the Northern Territory Government, in partnership with the Darwin Major Business Group, will deliver an inaugural investment summit in Darwin, showcasing investment opportunities in the Northern Territory. The Territory is open for business with a focus on innovation, investment and partnerships. We are unashamedly spreading the word that the Northern Territory is a dynamic and forward-thinking region that presents a wealth of opportunities. With our strategic location and proximity to Asia, the Northern Territory is poised to be a cornerstone of global digital connectivity. Reclaiming our position as Australia's gateway to Asia reinforces our role in regional security and economic stability, paving the way for a secure, resilient and interconnected future. Despite our small jurisdiction, the Northern Territory punches well above its weight when it comes to trade. Leveraging our strategic location, abundant natural resources and engagement with key global markets, the value of the Territory's merchant exports totaled $12.3 billion for the year ending March 2025. The majority of the export value came from the minerals and energy sector. The total value of the Territory's merchant imports totaled $9.2 billion for the year ending March 2025, with almost half of the import value coming from manufactured items such as aircraft parts and passenger vehicles, along with refined petroleum. Our services export industry for the Territory, inclusive of tourism and international education, was valued at $1.6 billion. In 2024, the Territory's live cattle exports saw more than 378,000 live cattle through the Port of Darwin, up 65% compared to the prior year, with Indonesia being our largest market. In the past financial year, 35 businesses shared in a pool of $170,000 under the Global Trade Scheme. The Territory's advanced manufacturing sector continues to grow from strength to strength, with the Territory Government's Advanced Manufacturing Ecosystem Fund allocating $5.56 million to 14 projects since 2021. Advanced manufacturing is an important enabler in rebuilding the Territory's economy. Investing in advanced manufacturing, automation and innovation on high-tech processes enables the Territory to compete with jurisdictions that have larger populations and cheaper labour. Enabling our local businesses to focus on niche markets creates value-added goods and responds rapidly to changing industry needs. This year, RISE Project Consulting, for example, moved forward with the commercialisation of a fit-for-purpose unmanned surface vehicle to measure and map wastewater ponds. Wataba, a local Indigenous business, became the first business in the Territory to offer advanced laser surface cleaning technology. We have a lot to be proud of in the Territory. Our government is supporting
Minister,
growth.
Through the chair, will we get a chance to ask questions? We've had a 27-minute opening statement so far. I believe it was supposed to be a brief opening statement. It's very important portfolios that you hold, Minister, and we've got some really good questions that we would love to talk about.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. As has been traditional, I accept your comment. Minister, I'll ask that you try and wind up within another 5 minutes.
Yep, I can do that, Chair. Our government is supporting growth and development of the Territory's innovation ecosystem, a dynamic and growing network that brings together government, industry, research, education and investment partners. The Territory innovation ecosystem connects local capability with national and international opportunities. The Business Innovation Program has supported 7 clients, achieves over $50,000 in sales or investments in their innovation. Businesses who have completed the Business Acceleration Program report a 44% higher revenue growth in the 4 years following the program, creating an additional $383.4 million in revenue. We are facilitating investment via co-lending partnerships with Paspalis and the Northern Australian Infrastructure Facility, and leveraging the strengths of research and training institutions including Charles Darwin University, CSIRO and Menzies School of Health Research. These partnerships support transformational projects, increase employment, impact positive GSP movement, facilitate or crowd in private finance and inject new capital into the Territory. So in closing, our goal is to build an economy that is the envy of the nation. Our Asian neighbours are taking note of the Territory's potential, and our CLP government is supporting business growth, building our workforce, attracting new investment, and rebuilding the Territory economy to benefit and enhance the lifestyle of all Territorians. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any questions relating to the statement? Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister. As I said, very important portfolios that you hold. Minister, have the machinery of government changes been fully bedded down? And if so, what change management processes have you followed?
Thank you for the question, Leader of the Opposition. So the short answer is yes. We have bedded down the MOG changes. As I'm sure you appreciate, it was a very complex process. So to oversight that, there was a change management committee put in place who have worked very closely with the teams to make sure that we had it right. As I'm sure you'll also appreciate, there were some shifts and changes in approach as that process was rolled out, and the committee were very, very good at overseeing that. And we have just had the final component of that, which was settling into all of the office spaces now all been settled, and everybody has their home, their desk and their chair, very important. And so we're very pleased with how that's now landed.
Thank you, Minister. That answers my next question, which was around all staff. Have they filled and been placed in their positions?
Yes.
Thank you. Minister, this is significant machinery of government changes, and what has been the total cost of the changes?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. So essentially what we've done is make sure that we continue business as close to as usual as possible through the change process. And until everything has been totally bedded down, there was a conscious decision made not to, for example, change business cards and change signage, because we wanted to know exactly where people were going to land. So the main cost that we have experienced has been in the relocation of offices, with some of the fit outs still costs coming in, so that hasn't been finally quantified. But the team have been working really, really hard to stay within budget parameters and work within existing funding arrangements. So, and making sure at the same time that that didn't diminish the service provision aspect of what they are required to do.
Thank you, Minister. So no specific breakdown of costs around the changes?
It's not something that was quantified. And the final piece of the move only occurred about 2 weeks ago. So, as I said a minute ago, Leader of the Opposition, that those final costs for those changes, you know, the obvious ones like the moving truck and making sure everybody's got their furniture, are just being finalised now. And so that will be reported on to myself once that's all done. But as I said, that we've been keeping informed as we've gone along to make sure that we actually manage that within budgetary frameworks.
Thank you, Minister. Through the Chair, Minister, how many staff are dedicated to internal and external communications?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. So we have 4 staff who are dedicated to external media and communications, but more broadly, the staff work together. So a lot of, I'm sure you'll appreciate, a lot of what the Department of Trade, Business and Asian Relations does is outward communication. That's a core part of their business. So, for example, the regional business officers, they spend quite a bit of time moving outward. So it's embedded in their roles that they actually have that communication focus going.
Thank you, Minister. And did you have a number of dedicated internal comms staff that you could share with the committee?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. The 4 people I mentioned before who look after media and communications more broadly also handle all the internal communications.
Well, thank them for their good work, because that's obviously double what they're probably expecting. Thank you, Minister. Through the Chair, Minister Charles earlier on in the estimates process said that you're the minister that's directly responsible for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art gallery. Is that correct?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. We're responsible for the business case.
Thank you.
The build is the responsibility of the Departments of Logistics and Infrastructure.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification, Minister. So my follow-up question is, Minister, who did you consult with before downgrading the 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙎 and its business case?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition, for that question. I think the very obvious response to that is that the concerns were very evident when we came to government that there was funding available for that project of $149 million, and the projected cost at the point of time we came into government was nearly $300 million. And we have experienced across many of the sectors, as we've been unravelling the budgetary process, that the general rule of thumb appears to have been under the previous Labor government to make announcements that had budgets attached to it but no funding attached to it. So in the event that we were facing down a significant, yet another significant overrun, as we've seen with the state gallery at located at the front of Parliament House, a blowout from 47 million to 143 million. That was simply not something that could be sustained. So the decision was made to go back to the drawing board and ensure that we could deliver a project on budget. And then that decision was meant that we had to look at the footprint, and there's been a minor decrease in the footprint. That work is currently underway, I understand, with the Department of Logistics and Infrastructure. Those discussions are ongoing with the federal government, and once those discussions are finalised and a decision has been reached as to what the project will look like, that would be when our department would come back into the discussion.
Thank you, Minister. I'm interested in the reference group and whether you had any interface with that in regards to the business case and the minister responsible. So my question is, Minister, why were the terms of reference updated in December 2024, and what were those changes?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I might just hand over to Deputy Chief Executive Kelly Ralston to respond to that.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Leader of the Opposition. The reference group has been part of the project for the duration of the project. With the changes of the scope of the program in late 2024, and obviously setting ourselves up for the next phase of work, which is the construction phase and the sort of detailed design of the operating model for the gallery. I guess the chance to reset the focus of the reference group. We had some members of the reference group depart as well, so there's just chance to re-engage with the group. Certainly the focus for the last 6 to 9 months has been on the construction piece of the work. We're now regrouping on the design piece, and we're talking to the reference group right now about commencing some meetings in the near future.
Thank you. And that kind of leads to my next question, which was around, Minister, either yourself or your team, why the reference group hasn't met in the estimates reporting period.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I think fundamentally the work, as I said, has been work focused on the design work. So the Department of Logistics and Infrastructure have had a big program of work to rescope the project on the new site, to look at the redesign of that. They're now at the 30% design phase. Now we have material to start talking to the reference group about. So very conscious that community engagement is really a very important part of the project going forward. So it's time for the reference group to regroup now, and there's some things to talk to them about.
Thank you. And Minister, modelling showed that the 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙬𝙎 would grow visitation in Alice Springs by 53,000 visitors to the Red Centre and inject an estimated $64 million into the economy. Have you done modelling yourself through the business case, and how much of economic benefit of that original $64 million that was anticipated will be reduced now that the business case has also been reduced and downgraded?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I'll just make the observation that I have had initial discussions with the original team about what the agenda was, and certainly I've had the opportunity to talk to a number of businesses in Alice Springs about the potential for the project. At this point in time, because we aren't at a point where we can consolidate what that new business case will look like, it's a little difficult to build on those projections. But Kelly has done some work on that, so I might pass on her to let you know where we're at with that particular point.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. We haven't done the remodelling. We did consider doing that last year, but actually I think wanted to get to the point of the design work to do that. The last modelling was done a number of years ago, and probably I think given the sort of COVID context hadn't been fully fed into that, some of those numbers. So as the project goes forward, that'll be an important part of the next phase of the work. But we weren't quite sure last year was the right time to do it, so we've held it over a little bit longer as some of the uncertainty sorts itself out.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer. I've been to Alice Springs several times in this term in my new role as Leader of the Opposition, and met with businesses around their own economic development and business cases for the 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙬𝙬. Have businesses, and Minister, you did mention that you have met with businesses in Alice Springs. What has been the feedback, considering that some businesses have created their whole business model and some of their investment pieces over the last few years have been specifically tailored to the 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙬𝙬, and they're feeling, the businesses I met with, feeling very disappointed with the downgrading of the scale of the project. What is the sentiment around businesses if you haven't done that economic modelling since the downgrade?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I think in the first instance, and certainly when I've been speaking to businesses in not just in Central Australia but across the Territory more broadly, the main focus has been how can we actually ensure that we drive our economy forward. And to be honest with you, very few of them in Alice Springs particularly have raised specifically the issue of 𝙍𝙀𝙬𝙬𝙬. What they have raised with me is to ensure that our government spends its money wisely, that we maximise every opportunity that we have, and that we make sure that what we do commit to can be delivered efficiently and effectively. The absolute driver, I think, of any project of a major significance in Alice Springs needs to be revitalising the mall area. There was some discussion around the couple of businesses I've talked to is they really want to see any development. And if you look at 𝙍𝙀𝙬𝙬𝙬 as an example, how does that drive business into the main CBD sector of the Alice Springs area, and how does that then flow on to the opportunities beyond that area? And so they really are they're very appreciative of the fact that we have said we will not commit to something that we don't have the money for, that we are not going to enter into a project that was projected to double in expenditure with no financial backing behind that. And also their concerns that they expressed to me in this space were that they had learned that there was no operational budget for the gallery either. So we potentially could have ended up with a fabulous building that cost us twice as much to build as we had hoped it would, and that had no money to operate it. So their main goal is whatever we do in the Alice Springs central area, that they've said to me, is that it's sustainable, that it's able to be supported through good business initiatives, and that it absolutely links into where they see that they're town should be driven.
Thank you, Minister. I'm very happy to pass on some of the businesses that I met with and the specific concerns they raised with me. Minister, did you liaise with, meet with, consult with the federal government around the downgrading of this project, considering there's $80 million contribution from the federal government for the 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙎?
Thank you again, Leader of the Opposition. As I observed before, the role of the Department of Trade, Business and Asian Relations in this space is around the business case and looking to see about the viability of the project. The discussions around the decision to ensure that we built to budget was a decision that was undertaken by the Department of Logistics and Infrastructure, and Minister Yan led that process, so that was a question that really should have been addressed to him.
Thank you. I think there was disappointment from the same people that they had engaged with Minister Yan and hadn't seen him for some time. Through the Chair, Tourism Central Australia Chief Executive Mr Daniel Rochford said that the gallery was, and I quote, a critical part of strengthening the town's economy. Minister, have you engaged with anyone else in Alice Springs around the downgrade of the project? What tourism industry bodies have you engaged with? And you've obviously mentioned local businesses already, so I'll take that part out of the question.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Yes, I have met with Daniel on more than one occasion about more broadly the things that need to occur to actually revitalise not just Central Australia but the territory more broadly. And I have to confess the main topics of discussion with Daniel have not included 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙀 specifically or even generally. Most of the discussions I've had with him have been revolving around connectivity and actually increasing people's ability to access. So, for example, one of the critical elements that he raised with me and that we are working very hard on is the fact that you cannot fly from Alice Springs to Uluru, something that just defies logic in my understanding of what would be the best way to drive the economy in Central Australia. The fact that the only supported routes that were negotiated under the previous Labor government were from Melbourne and Brisbane to Uluru. So if you live in Alice Springs and you want to fly to Uluru, you've got to fly to Melbourne or Brisbane first. It baffles me. So the other area that he has particularly focused on is how we can ensure that people, when they're coming and travelling and staying in Alice Springs, that they feel safe in the community, and that his focus in the discussions that we've had have really revolved around that. So I can categorically say that he has not raised with me specifically any issues around 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙀, but next time I will see him, I'll make sure to ask him if that is something that he would like to explore with me.
Thank you, Minister. The question did quote Mr Rochford, but it was specifically around were there other tourism bodies or industry bodies, tourism businesses essentially, that you've met with around 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙀.
Thank you again, Leader of the Opposition. Yes, Daniel Rochford has been very helpful in connecting me with a number of the local tourism businesses in the particularly the Alice Springs region, and I have actually had the opportunity to sit down and speak with them. And again, the main issues that they raised with me related to connectivity. How do we get people to Alice? How do we keep them focused on coming here? How do we broaden the opportunities for them once they land here to actually explore the beautiful areas that are around Alice Springs? And how do we ensure that we dispel that myth that Alice Springs is not a safe place to visit?
Thank you. Your comments very much appreciated, Minister. Through the Chair, Minister, did you make the decision to go to the expression of interest process for the Darwin State Square Art Gallery?
Leader of the Opposition, thank you for the question. That is not within my portfolio process, so the decision was taken at Cabinet.
Okay, thank you. Minister, in that case, did your department or has your department to date received any expressions of interest for the Darwin State Square Art Gallery and the process that's been announced by your government?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition, for the question. My understanding is it's a multi-agency approach for this particular EOI, and no, I'm not aware of any expressions having been received at this point in time, but that wouldn't necessarily come to me as it's an operational matter at this point.
Understand. Thank you very much, Minister. Minister, with the Darwin State Square Art Gallery, the Darwin Major Business Group was the brains behind that idea. Is that something you've had representations to you as the Minister for Business around the master plan that was provided, the economy, the jobs that were supposed to be attached to that master plan with the State Square Gallery, and what's the latest update you could share with the committee, please?
Thank you for the question. Leader of the Opposition, the short answer is no, I haven't had any representation from the Darwin Major Business Group on the issue.
Thank you. It's very refreshing to have a minister that can answer a question and cut straight to the question. I actually really appreciate it. Thank you, Minister. When it comes to the State Square Art Gallery, it's obviously been built fit for purpose around an art gallery. Is there something that your department is looking at through any business case models? Obviously at 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙎𝙎 as an Alice Springs project and business project around the economy. That was the purpose, obviously, of the State Square Art Gallery as well. Is there something that your department has focused on around that multi-agency relationship or partnership around what could be the future use or purpose of the State Square Art Gallery since the announcement? There's been no leadership in your team, not by you, of course, but by some of your teammates around what the government intends to do around that space, that very purpose-built space.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I might question your interpretation of what a purpose-built space is. I don't know a lot about the art gallery. I do know, for example, there's no storage capacity in the art gallery, so it's very questionable whether it's a purpose-built space that was fit for purpose. But I'll park that to one side. The bottom line is the EOI's out there. Those expressions will come in, and I expect at that point in time, if there's the opportunity for us to investigate what the business opportunities might be in that space, that would be when we would get involved as a department.
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate your answer. Minister, you spoke about some of that engagement across your Asian relation portfolio, which is really exciting. How many international trips have you undertaken since becoming the Minister from August 2024 till the reporting period, so 31st of March 2025?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition, for the opportunity to talk about this. You might be sorry you asked the question. I did actually already detail the trips that I undertook, that I've undertaken. So I've taken 3. So the first trip was to Timor-Leste in November last year. It was an incredibly fruitful and very important reconnection with Timor-Leste, and enabled us to discuss with Timor-Leste the opportunity to look at the strategic partnership, refresh it, and explore what other opportunities there may be for us to engage with the Timor-Leste government. I think I met with around about 180 people in that visit. So they ranged from ministerial colleagues to government officials to not-for-profit providers of services. I make it my business whenever I go anywhere as much as possible to not just focus on my one conglomerate of ministerial portfolio, so the business and then children's and families. So I actually was very fortunate to be able to, when I went to Timor-Leste, to also have a look at a number of programs that are working in empowering women's space, which I was very excited to bring back some information back onto some of the team back here in Darwin in the Department of Children's and Families. So that trip was really important because it sent a very clear message to Timor-Leste that we are very strong in our partnership with them, and we absolutely believe that we have a future together. The second trip that I undertook was to Indonesia, which was a very intense trip. I was very fortunate to be able to meet with the Vice Foreign Minister of the Indonesian government, who I'm advised doesn't ordinarily meet with the government officials from states and territories. So his interest in our MOU for critical minerals and strategic supply chain was very encouraging, and I can advise that I have had regular contact through the ambassador, the Indonesian ambassador to Australia from the Vice Minister to make sure that those discussions and those negotiations are on track. We also had the opportunity to meet with a number of businesses. I think the total number of engagement, the people that we met, there was about 500 people. We hosted a number of business lunches, and the most exciting thing that came out of that was within 3, 4, 5 days after arriving back, we had two of the businesses that we met with reached out to us with direct connections to businesses in the Northern Territory, and we've had a delegation actually travel from Indonesia to Darwin to progress those discussions, particularly around the mining industry. We're really fortunate. It may seem a little odd, but Indonesia and the Northern Territory are almost in the identical position in where do we go from being very good at taking stuff out of the ground to actually what do we do with it once we take it out of the ground? Do we just sell it or do we do things locally? And so we're in a very parallel pathway where we've been able to support each other. I also had the opportunity to speak at the Indonesian Economic Summit, which was put us front and centre on the stage there to a number of businesses. The third trip I took was to Singapore, which was a very different focus. It was very much focused around the digital economy, which is a very exciting area for the Northern Territory. We have the capacity and the opportunity, particularly with the securing of a cheap energy supply, to become the digital capital of Australia and into the Southeast Asian region. So the geopolitical instability that's occurring across the globe actually provides us with some very unique opportunities. So that was very, very, very helpful, and the number of people I met with was not quite as great as the previous 2 meetings because the people who work in that sector it's a highly innovative, low number of employee sector in the businesses. So there's around about 50 people I met with there. That included meeting with the Sun Cable Project people. We met with Seeds Capital, who are partnered with the Paspalas Innovation Centre here in the Territory, and we were able to progress discussions around what are the other opportunities we might have to actually build upon making Darwin not just the gateway to Asia in terms of people coming and going, but the actual gateway to Asia in terms of infrastructure and port access, and looking and exploring at things that we don't currently have. For example, should we have a bond warehouse here, which would really secure our space in that area to be able to really build on that opportunity. So I know that international travel sounds exotic. I can tell you it's not. It's very hectic. But the really, really great thing about it was that we know very clearly that if you want to build relationships into Asia, they have to be face-to-face. They have to be personal. You have to make the effort. And it was very critical, having closed the door on that region back in 2016, that we set a very clear message to them that our door is open, we want to re-engage, and the number of ambassadors that have come to the Territory and visited with both myself and the Chief Minister and a number of my ministerial and legislative colleagues, and have expressed their absolute desire to continue to build those relationships, is very reassuring, and I think it only augurs well for the Territory's future.
Thank you, Minister, for that comprehensive update. Are you able to provide a breakdown of the costs for each of these 3 trips for the committee?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I can't find my page with the bigger writing, so bear with me. It's very tiny. So I really make sure that where possible, we keep costs as low as possible. So the total cost of the trip to Timor-Leste for myself was just over $2,057.55. My trip to Indonesia, which included two-pronged, I guess, approach. It was business. We also did a lot of work around the international education space. We were away for just on a week. That was a total of $8,647.39. And then the Singapore trip was a total of $6,913.33. So a total for myself of $17,618.27.
Thank you. I wish some of your colleagues were as diligent in keeping records of their travel. Minister, in terms of the return to investment in the territory, you've spoken very highly of the relationship, and I very much appreciate that. In terms of dollar figures, is there a way that the department can create a process to see what the return for dollar, like the bang for buck essentially that we get for the territory's business perspective or engagement perspective? Is there a pro forma or a calculation that we could look to, or is this something that the department is thinking to do if you don't already have something in place?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. It's very early days, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. Rebuilding a relationship that was shattered takes time and encouragement. But what is really encouraging is the return on the investment in the first instance, not necessarily financial, but in terms of interactions. So far, in the work that we've done, we've had 41 active leads come in for further exploration. So 34 early stage investors. So that's quite significant when you consider we've only been to 3 countries. This includes the work that we're doing to support the implementation of the Memorandum of Understanding with Samsung, working closely with investors such as Crowley. The work that we're doing in the Indonesian MOU space is also critical. There's absolute commitment from the Indonesian government to see that progressed. We have what they need, which is lithium and copper, to build their EV, electric vehicle agenda, which they are planning to be the largest producers of electric vehicles within the next decade, which is quite a lofty target given the dominance of countries like China in that field. But they see very clearly that we will have a role to play in that partnership. The next lot of work in that will really give us a very strong indication of where that's going to take us. So progressing the working group, which has been set up, there'll be follow-up delegations with including businesses into Indonesia to consolidate those relationships. So at the moment, in terms of what we're doing in this space, we've got an active investor-led pipeline of 75 projects, which is a capital expenditure of around $300 million. So what that will look like down the track as we go, it's not just about taking out of the ground, it's also about how do we turn that into industry that brings people to live and work here on a longer term basis. That will be the work that we'll continue to do as those projects start to become realised.
Thank you, Minister. And in terms of your department, how many international trade delegation trips have been undertaken in the reporting period? To which countries, and what were the associated costs?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. It is bigger print, which is much better. So since June 2024, which is a little bit before we came into government, I forgot the count, hang on. We've had 15 departmental trips. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, before a ministerial trip can occur, you need to do the groundwork beforehand. But a number of these trips have related to the preparation for our participation in the 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑 World Expo, which is a significant event for the Northern Territory. That event started in April and runs through until October, and there's 150 countries participating. So we are literally showcasing on the world stage, and they're expecting around 28 million people to attend that event.
Sorry, Minister. I know
Sorry, I just got told I double counted some troops.
Oh, that's all right. I was just going to ask while you were getting
I
some
counted heads,
clarification.
not troops. Sorry.
I was just going to ask if the 15 you might clarify the number now, sorry, but the 15 delegations and which countries and what were the associated costs? They were just the three parts of that question.
There were 9 troops.
So 9 troops and Minister.
Lucky I'm not the treasurer, right? So there were 9
and which
trips,
countries?
and the information for all of the costs around these trips were provided in the written question. But I can list them all if you like, each person and the costs associated.
That's all right. I know that we got them back this morning, and we don't always get a chance whilst we're in estimates to be reading the questions when they're delivered back to us 2 months after the date. Thank you, Minister. In terms of funding allocation to the department travel budget of 2025-26 in the financial period, is there a breakdown of trips which have been planned for countries in the next budget, the CLP budget?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I said one thing that I've learnt very quickly in developing our agenda for this role is that what I think I might be doing next week is probably not what I'm going to be doing next week. So whilst we have a targeted agenda of where we would like to go, and certainly that has been negotiated and discussed with the department, I've already had that adjusted 3 or 4 times, so there's no forward projection per se, but please rest assured that I've sent a very clear message that wherever we go, it has to be as economical as possible. I recently became aware that there was a policy of booking flexi fares for a lot of travel, and I've said, well, no, best fare on the day. With that, we need to make sure that we're maximising the value for money for taxpayers. So as we develop the forward plan, so there are some really obvious countries that we would like to engage with, for example, Vietnam and China and Taiwan and the Philippines. The list is potentially endless, but we have to be very smart about what we're doing. We have to make sure that where we go has a very real opportunity for return on investment to the Northern Territory. So the only definite trips that have been booked for forward is I will be travelling to Malaysia at the end of the month because we have the flight coming in from Malaysia, and I will be travelling to Osaka. But even that trip originally started out at a period of time that I didn't think was appropriate, so we've reshaped that, and we're making sure that we can get the best value for money. And we've recently put out for expressions of interest for businesses to attend with us, and the response has been phenomenal in a very short space of time. So I think businesses see this opportunity to travel with department staff and with ministerial input into their trips actually does add value and really supports what they're doing in the export-import space. So at this stage, they're the only 2 definitive trips that are in the pipeline, and I would be very happy if it stayed that way because travel does take a lot out of you. And I don't think we'll be doing much beyond that for the rest of the year. I am going to Timor-Leste for the 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙍𝙍 yacht race and to progress a discussion around what we can do to support the Timor-Leste government in their efforts to look at how they manage their gas production. So,
thank you, Minister. Geez, I think the Deputy Chief Minister would learn a lot from you and your department. You're very diligent. I very much appreciate it. Minister, can you provide a breakdown of the Territory Aviation Attraction Scheme and the funding that has been expended in the reporting period?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition, for the questions. I'm sure you'll appreciate I can't go into specific details in terms of specific routes because they are commercial in confidence arrangements. But what I can tell you is that the expenditure year to date 24-25 was just under $500,000. The estimate for 20. Yeah, that will increase significantly by the end of the financial year because we've invested quite a bit into marketing for those routes. Because it's one thing to say we think this is a good idea, it has the benefit, and we want to get bottoms on seats into the territory, but we also need to let people know that they're available. And so we've taken a bit of a lead on that because we felt that the airlines were not taking a lead on promoting those routes. And the budget for 25-26 is currently sitting at $8.589 million because, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, Leader of the Opposition, the money doesn't go out unless somebody occupies a seat. So we have a quantum of funding and then once the seat is occupied, the money is paid to the airline. If the seat's not occupied, it's not paid. So it allows us to actually carry that forward and make sure that we can maximise the opportunity to look to other routes that we might want to support into the future.
Thank you, Minister. That leads into my next question is there any details that you can provide or your department around specific airport routes or airline services that are being targeted through the Aviation Attraction Scheme?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I can tell you the routes I'm targeting that aren't part of the scheme. But there's nothing at the moment that's being discussed in that space. I am, however, targeting a number of international routes that I'm hoping will be commercially viable and won't require any support from government.
Thank you, Minister. In the May sittings of Parliament, you declared mission accomplished on the airfare affordability for Territorians. Minister, can you please explain why you think it's acceptable still that Territorians are paying upwards of $600 one way for non-direct flights to their domestic destinations?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I've been here for 30 years and I can tell you there were days 30 years ago where a flight was going to cost me $3,000 one way, and then I booked it and, booked it for a different time and place, and it was going to be $600 return. I mean, the reality is the earlier you can book, the better. We are now at peak season for the Northern Territory. What I can tell you that I had a colleague book 2 return flights for his parents from Brisbane to Darwin in 3 weeks out, so booked last week for 3 weeks out, and he got the 2 return flights with Qantas, which is what surprised me, return for $1,600 for 2. So there are definitely economic seats there. The sad reality is if you actually if you've got to do things at the last minute, it's always been the case in the Northern Territory that is going to cost you more. I've had that experience. I've also had the experience of booking a very, very inexpensive flight at short notice. So it really does depend on the route. Qantas have actually added 95,000 additional seats into the network for us. Virgin, an additional 15,000 seats. If we're talking about trying to book a flight in the middle of June when there are the V8s and Barunga and Glenty and a whole bunch of other really exciting things on, it's going to be a little bit expensive. But generally speaking, I feel that we have moved back to a much closer parity of where things were when I moved here, where you knew that if you were organised and you booked ahead, you could get decent prices for your aviation. You have choice. We've got some much better direct flights available now too, which is great. But the reality will always be in our peak seasons, it's always going to be tough.
Thank you, Minister. In terms of direct routes across and our major cities interstate, are there any that you are focused on? I know you mentioned some international ones that you're working on, but are there any domestic routes that you are focused on other than key holiday destinations such as Gold Coast and Cairns, which I know you've already mentioned?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Most definitely. I think we absolutely have to we're discussing with both Qantas and Virgin and Air North the opportunity of expanding the network. So, for example, we have the seasonal Canberra flight that's just been reinstated. I believe that we have a good case to put forward to say that that should be all year round, and I think that the federal government has a role to play in that. I think we absolutely need to be arguing for much better connectivity between our major capital cities. So Sydney and Melbourne seem to be routes that are very hit and miss. I have a meeting coming up with Qantas where I'll be raising these issues with them, and I will also be following up, as I do on a regular basis, with Virgin. The main thing we have to do is we give people a reason to come to Territory. The demand is there, then the flights will come. I absolutely appreciate that at the end of the day it's an economic decision, but we have to make it so that the economic decision is an easy one to make. The other route that I am absolutely focused on improving is Darwin to Adelaide, because the loss of the Virgin direct flight there was significant, and we will continue to advocate for that as well.
Thank you, Minister. And as I know you can appreciate, often Territorians are finding it really difficult to travel to see family, but also, in terms of business and conducting processes that may encourage more business here in the Territory, that can be quite an inhibitor. When it comes to some of the permanent routes, Territory versus seasonal, I know you mentioned the Canberra one. Are there any others that you're focused on that could possibly become permanent?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I think that one of the first things I'll observe is that it was quite a lot of interest to the aviation sector that the aviation responsibility came into the business portfolio. Historically, it's been in tourism because that's been the focus. And sitting down with them and explaining that we believe that in order for aviation to be ongoing and secure and routes not to be at risk, it has to be bread and butter, and bread and butter is business, and then tourism becomes the icing or the cream in the mix. So working with them and talking to them about the opportunities that we have in growing our economy and the major investment projects that are on the horizon, it's really a matter of advocating for consistent, regular routes between Darwin and Brisbane, Darwin and Canberra, Darwin and Sydney, Darwin and Melbourne, Darwin and Adelaide, to all the capital cities, Darwin and Perth, so that we, if we maximise those, and one of the things I have heard anecdotally, and I haven't actually had an opportunity to get any statistics from the airlines, but we will certainly be asking them to give us their view on what's happening, is people saying over the past few weeks that when they're coming back on planes, they are absolutely full. And when they're flying out, they are absolutely full. So that's fantastic, because if they're full, then that shows there's greater demand, and that encourage us to actually have the case forward to the major airlines that they should actually be looking at increasing the routes that are available, not just on a seasonal basis, but on a consistent basis. So if the bread and butter is business, which is year round, that will alleviate that view that it has to be seasonal. So it's early days. We've had some very strong and robust discussions with the airlines. We also know that there's been lots of discussions around what are the innovative ways we can approach it. We are dealing with a situation where technology, for once, is not in our best interests, because aircraft that are faster, more efficient, that do not have to land in Darwin in order to fly to Bali, means that we don't get, for example, that regular Adelaide-Darwin, Denpasar route. So we need to give people a reason to fly in. And one of the benefits of increasing the international routes into Darwin is people land in Darwin, they spend their 2 or 3 days in Darwin, then they want to go somewhere else. That's the other selling point for us with the airlines, to actually improve the daily connectivity, and that's what we'll continue to advocate for.
Thank you, Minister. Through the chair, I know you mentioned business and connection and the regular travel that can be sustained because of business in regional towns like Nhulunbuy and the member for Mulca's electorate, and Aliangula and my electorate of Arnhem on Groote Island. Residents and business men and women, as well as contractors, are paying nearly $800 one way just to get to Darwin, usually a 120-minute flight. Do you think this is acceptable for intra-territory airfare, and what are you and your government doing about it?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Again, it comes back to demand. We have to increase demand if we want to actually reduce prices, and we have to continue to work with not just the airlines, but I think we also have to work with the federal government. There has been a lot of discussion with the federal government about their support of regional airlines in other states. They have not had those same discussions with us. I don't think that's good enough. So we will actually be taking that discussion to them as well. So if you're prepared to support and subsidise regional airlines in other states and territories where we have critical requirements of connectivity within the territory, where it is expensive for airlines, if they're not having a full flight, then there has to be a way to actually support that. So we will continue to advocate in that space, and we'll continue to work with our regional airline to see how we can actually maximise the opportunities for them so that costs are actually minimised. We also need to work with our airport development group around the costs that have been associated with the redevelopment of the runway, where a private company has been expected to foot the bill for what was essentially a Defence Force requirement. So I think there's still a lot of work to do in that space to actually advocate to have a greater pickup of the cost of that runway upgrade to be picked up by the Defence Force as opposed to a private sector company.
Thank you, Minister. In keeping in line with my question around regional and remote areas, are there specific companies or conversations or meetings that you'll be focused on to make sure that Territorians in remote parts of the territory get the best deal possible for that remote travel?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I think the challenge in this space, again, is when you're talking about remote communities and small populations and small and low demand, I think there really does have to be an approach where we work with the communities, with the businesses who are in the communities to see how we can maximise the opportunity for them, and then work with providers to see what is inhibiting them in providing what many might consider to be a more appropriate fare. And then we need to look at how we might be able to advocate in that space around the costs of doing business and how the federal government, one of the challenges I think in this space is that we don't have oversight or coverage of the relationships in those contracts with the federal government and the aviation sector because it is managed at a federal government level. So we need them to advocate on behalf of our regional and remote areas to make it more affordable as well.
Thank you, Minister. I specifically picked 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑𝘍𝙍, obviously basically the richest island in Australia with the GEMCO South 32 mine there, and 𝙍𝙀𝙍𝙍, of course, with Rio Tinto. So in terms of demand, I haven't picked like a random small community just for, you're noting. Those are two big business opportunities. The supply and demand there, I imagine, are probably the anomaly in the rest of the territory in being two major economic drivers in the territory being those two regional towns. Minister, in regards to the support for regional airlines, will we be able to expect across the territory lower airfare prices, more service reliability for particularly those two routes of Darwin-𝙍𝙀𝙍 and Darwin to Groote Eylandt?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I think I've generally answered the question. The real issue is if competition drives down price, and yes, they are rich in resource businesses and suppliers. I think one of the real challenges for the Northern Territory in the regionals, we think of our different areas as regional and remote when in actual fact our whole territory, if you look at the rest of Australia, would be classified as such. But when you don't have that regular ongoing demand where you can get competition in, I think we will continue to have discussions with the airlines about what we can do to improve that. We will continue to have discussions with the Airport Development Group around the costs associated in these spaces and how we can actually make it a more attractive environment for other people to come into the sector. And we will continue to advocate where we can for getting those prices to be what we would consider more reasonable.
Thank you. Again, just those two examples, I guess, have way over the demand that the single carrier can actually afford to meet the demand of, which is why they then have to outsource extra carriers purely for the purpose of both mines in Nhulunbuy and on Groote Eylandt. Minister, in regards to the work that your department is undertaking around air travel affordability in the Northern Territory, is it your commitment that you'll also consult with regional communities and remote communities around the very essence of what you've been speaking about, frequency needs surrounding connections that could be put through a regular or permanent route? And if so, when would that consultation be occurring?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I've already started those conversations. They will continue. So I've done my first go round, if you like, of the Northern Territory. I've also been to a couple of the more remote areas. So I haven't been to Groote yet, but I'm working on that. And we will continue to engage with the businesses in those areas, with the communities in those areas to see what it is we can do to assist them in that space. So the conversation is always there, and one of the things I very much say to everybody that I meet with, every business I meet with, every organisation I meet with, they don't have to wait for me to reach out to them, they can reach out to me.
Thank you, Minister. I'll have some Groote Eylandt constituents who will definitely be very keen to meet with you and reach out to you. Minister, in regards, you mentioned the federal government and the conversations that you've flagged or anticipate to be having in terms of meetings. What has so far been confirmed that we know is that the federal government is willing to approve a trial for cabotage and removal in Northern Australia. What concrete steps has your government taken to find an airline that is willing to participate?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I know that the federal government has made a bit of a song and dance about that, but the fact is that that capacity has always existed. That's not a new thing. The reality is that for an international airline to consider that, they need to consider it's not just about picking up passengers in one space. It's about the ability to consistently do that, the ability to then on route to other places. So the ability to apply for that, and I know that there have been stakeholders recently who have actually said this is going to fix everything. The reality is if it was going to fix things and if we had airlines in that space who thought it was viable, they would have already done it. I think what we need to do is that we have to really look to routes that don't currently get service that may actually provide that opportunity. If we don't get it right, if we see cabotage come in and it's not done in a space where it adds value as opposed to detracts, it could very well damage the existing routes that we already have. So it's a very fine line. And as I said, it's not a new thing. It's always existed. Any airline could put a case for that now. The fact that they haven't done so ever would tell me that they probably don't think it's worth their while.
Thank you, Minister. But will those conversations officially occur, and if so, when?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, every conversation that an airline has will be based on economic sustainability. So airlines that we've met with, that we've engaged with, they're aware of the opportunity for doing that. None of them have indicated it's something that they would like to take up.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, with the work that's happened with the designated area migration agreement, which is obviously great news for the Northern Territory, there were concerns that you as Minister in your office approved the use of department resources to promote the CLP federal candidate on a government-run Facebook page, which is meant to be non-partisan. What do you say to that, Minister?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I'd have to say that I'm not sure what that has to do with budget estimates or operational outputs and connections to pretty much anything. Sorry.
Yeah, and Minister, and I'll table the photo just so the committee does have a record through the chair. Thank you. The photo was obviously around government business. It was through the Industry Northern Territory Facebook page, which has the Northern Territory government logo, which is not supposed to be political. The post has the wording, Northern Territory and Australian government sign new designated area migration agreement, DARMA 3. There's some more text there, but in terms of the screenshot that I've tabled, there is a photo of you there, Minister, with the Territory flag. Obviously, you're the Northern Territory Minister responsible, the Australian Government representative, the member for Fong Lim, the member for Solomon at the time and now the current member for Solomon, and then also the CLP's candidate for the seat of Solomon. So is there justification, Minister, of why Industry Northern Territory used propaganda or was okayed or approved to have the CLP federal and federal Liberal Party represented rather than being bipartisan as a territory government should be through territory funds of taxpayers?
Asked and answered, Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. Through the chair, Minister, can you please table for the Estimates Committee the cost of the department's use of that photo, outline to the committee who in the department was responsible for that photo and what was then done in terms of alerting that it had a political candidate in the photo?
Minister, it's up to you whether you answer or not.
Thank you, Chair. It's been asked and answered.
Thank you. And through the chair, Minister, did you personally request that Miss Lisa Bayliss, the CLP's candidate for Solomon, attend the official government event? And if so, why? And what public funds were used to invite her to the event?
Sorry, Leader of the Opposition, I think the Minister's already answered this question. Can we move on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's actually a different question. I'm now asking for how much it costs to invite Miss Bayliss to a government-funded event.
Leader of the Opposition, that particular event was organised through the federal government. You might want to ask them.
Thank you. And then, Minister, if it was a federal government event here at Parliament House, which is, we know, an accessed facility once you go through the security, who in either your office or the Chief Minister's office approved the invitation for Miss Bayliss to attend a government event?
Asked and answered.
Thank you, Minister. Can we stick to budget questions around this department?
Thank
please?
you. And Mr. Chair, I didn't get a response from the Minister in how much it costs, so I can ask that question again. How much did it cost to have the CLP's failed candidate for Solomon, Miss Lisa Bayliss, attend a government
Leader of the Opposition,
event in
sorry.
Parliament House?
Sorry, I think the Minister's already answered. She's not going further.
So,
Leader of the Opposition, can we move on, please? Thank you.
So it sounds like the chair is also shutting down the answer for the Minister, who's not even answering a question. So, Minister, in terms of justifying taxpayer-funded money for communication by your government department, who is responsible for that decision?
Leader of the Opposition, I've already explained that the whole event was organised and the member for Solomon was invited, even though the 𝙍𝙬𝙍𝙍 was very much a Northern Territory government-driven process, was organised by the federal government, and the photos were all taken by the federal government's photographer, is my recollection.
Thank you, Minister. So will you table all correspondence between your office and industry and tea staff regarding the 𝙍𝙬𝙍𝙍 media event and Facebook posts that feature the CLP's candidate for Solomon, Miss Lisa Bayliss?
Leader of the Opposition, this is a budget estimates process. I did not extend any invitation to anybody in that room. Budget estimate process, if you've got a question about the budget or you've got a question...
Leader of the Opposition, can you direct it through the chair, please? And I absolutely agree. We are getting off track now. We either get back onto budget estimates questions or we move on to someone else.
Thank you, Chair. To the Minister, how much did it cost taxpayers to have a photo of the CLP candidate put on the Industry NT Facebook page?
Minister, don't answer that, please. I warned you again, Leader of the Opposition.
It's up to the Minister and how she answers, and now you're answering for her. You just
I have asked you to move on from this line of questioning. I won't ask again. Thank you.
Well, what's the point, Mr. Chair, of asking a question if you're answering on behalf of the Minister? I didn't realise you'd just become a Minister in the last minute.
Let's calm down.
I'm calm.
You have mentioned this. We've gone through this line of questioning. The Minister has come back a number of times with an answer. We are now getting off track from our budget estimates, which is where we need to focus. So can we all come back to the Budget Estimates Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, because there were taxpayer dollars for a political candidate, will your department issue an apology and reaffirm that it is non-partisan for the purpose of Territorians' belief in government communication platforms that should not be politicised by government departments?
Leader of the Opposition, I'm not going to do this, so I am going to say I'm giving you an early warning. We move on from this line of questioning. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, am I allowed to ask any questions that don't have your approval prior to when I'm asking about taxpayer-funded dollars in the budget on the CLP, and a question around political spending and non-partisan government spending that has become political?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. You've gone through this a number of times. As I've said, I've made a ruling. Can we move on, please? I won't ask again.
Can I ask what your ruling is then, through the Chair?
My ruling is that we move on to other questions. Thank you.
So you don't want your Minister to answer this important question for Territorians?
Leader of the Opposition, this is your last chance. You will go into an official warning straight away if you ask again. Are there any further questions? Are there any further questions? Any further questions on the opening statement?
Yeah, I have one.
Sorry, Member for Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, are you able to advise how many new surveyors have been registered in the Northern Territory over the past 5 years and 10 years?
Member for Johnson, I just make the observation that we can answer questions relevant to the current budget process, so I can't go back 5 or 10 years because that's not relevant, and I'm not sure if we've got that number, but just bear with me.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll take it on notice. We could provide you the numbers of surveyors registered since August.
In the reporting period?
In the reporting period,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Members Johnson, can you please restate the question for the record?
How many new surveyors have been registered in the Northern Territory in the reporting period?
Minister, do you accept the question?
Member for Johnson, this may answer your question, but if it doesn't, we can take it again on notice. So the number of applications that have been processed in the current reporting period of surveyors is 45.
Thank you. So when you say process, they're people who have been registered?
well, their applications have been processed. Whether they've actually become surveyors is, whether they've finalised the process that they've applied, whether they were approved, I couldn't tell you that, but I can tell you that number were processed.
Is it possible on notice to get the answer of how many were approved?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you. I think it's a question on notice.
Okay, so Member for Johnson, please restate the question for the record.
How many surveyors were approved in the reporting period? Is that clear enough? Yeah, thank you.
Minister, do you accept the question?
Yes.
Okay. The question asked by the member for Johnson of the Minister has been allocated the number of 8.1. Any further questions? Yes. Member for Blaine.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, during your opening statement, you referenced the cattle industry and negotiations you've had with our neighbours to the north about the cattle industry. Do you mind talking about the prospects for growing the cattle industry, as it's a very important industry to the top end, and there's a lot of our communities and pastoralists' livelihoods depend on this industry. So if you could enlighten me on our negotiations to increase the market for our cattle industry.
Thank you, Member for Blaine. My detailing of where the success in that space was about the opportunity and that we can realise the opportunities for growing the sector. That rests with Minister Maley. So unfortunately, what I can tell you is that in my discussions in the sector, in my visit to Indonesia, is there is great interest in expanding that, and we know that there are other markets that are very keen to see live exports from the Northern Territory to their markets, and I have passed that information on to Minister Maley, so he's aware of those interested parties, and I have no doubt he will progress that.
Any further questions on the opening statement?
Yes, I do.
Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙍.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Just to yourself and the department, with the machinery of government changes following the August election, could you confirm how many EC positions were transferred out, transferred in or created within the department?
Thank you, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙍. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, the previous department was quite a large department. And as a brand new department, we had people transfer in as opposed to transfer out. I can tell you that we had 18 in total. As of today, 6 who were previously with DCMC, 11 who were previously with Dept, and then 1 new position. So 18 in total have been allocated into the new department.
Right. And Minister, what levels are those EC positions?
Okay. So we have 7... I know it's back to front, sorry. ECO1. 7 ECO1s.
Yes.
6 ECO2s, 3 ECO3s, 1 ECO4 and 1 ECO6.
Okay. Thank you. And Minister, could you just confirm within the last reporting period how many external consultants have been engaged?
Thank you, Member for 𝙍𝙬𝙍𝙎. It's the splitting between the when we came in and when we weren't in that's a challenge. So altogether, for the whole reporting period, there was 17, but of that 17, only 5 since we came into government.
Right. And are those 17? No, hang on a sec. You said 17 plus 5 or 17? Including. Thank you. Of the 17, how many of those are territory consulting businesses?
Thank you, Member for 𝙍𝙬𝙍𝙎. So 7 external to the territory and 10 internal to the territory.
Great. And Minister, one last question from me. Are you the Minister responsible for desert knowledge?
Member for 𝙍𝙬𝙍𝙎, I'm told no.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you.
Any further questions on the opening statement?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just about the travel.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. Minister, I've just had someone text me while we've been doing this session, the latest fare from 𝙍𝙬𝙍𝙬 to Darwin, $900 one way. Appreciating, many people can probably get a return trip to Bali from Darwin for less than that, if not for 2 people. Will you commit to a visit? You said you've been thinking about it, but will you commit to a visit to 𝙍𝙬 in the second half of the year to meet with the residents, with the business people, with the contractors who frequently fly to and from 𝙍𝙬 for personal and professional reasons, to talk about airfare affordability?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I haven't been because I haven't wanted to go. We've actually had 3 tentative dates that have all had to be changed due to different conditions. I've got a tentative booking coming up in the next 2 to 3 weeks, is my understanding. We're just finalising the arrangements, because when I do travel, I don't just travel for this portfolio. I make sure that I do as much work as possible across all of my portfolios. So I almost got on a plane at one stage. So I'm very disappointed I haven't been there yet, but it's most definitely on the agenda, and I'm very, very keen to talk to the community members there and the businesses that are on the ground.
Thank you, Minister. You're the first Minister who's committed to travelling out to my electorate on my invitation, so thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions on the opening statement? Well, if there's no further questions, the committee will now consider the estimates of proposed expenditure contained in the Appropriation Bill 2025-26 as they relate to the Department of Trade, Business and Asian Relations. Are there any agency-related whole-of-government questions on budget and fiscal strategies? Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, can you please explain the change in customer satisfaction key performance indicators with business support services and programs? Why has the target decreased from 90% to 75%? And do you think you're unable to meet a higher customer satisfaction target, hence it being dropped?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. So with much of what will occur, I'm sure, through the discussion around the outputs is we're not comparing apples and apples, we're comparing apples and oranges. We've got a new department So we looked at what was a reasonable approach to measuring outputs. If it would be of some assistance, we can provide you with the definition as to how that number was arrived at. But it was a view as a new department that was an appropriate target to aspire to.
Sorry, thank you, Miss. Thank you through the chair. Minister, has your government conducted any diplomatic damage control following the backflip on the Darwin port lease? Or is it just expected that our Asian neighbours will ignore the fact that the CLP has done this deal and now publicly has been campaigning against it in the new government?
Leader of the Opposition, I think that's a question you should direct to your federal government colleagues. They're the ones who've been driving this discussion. All my discussions with all of my in this area has focused on the fact that we are the best place to do business in the territory for foreign investment, and everybody that I've spoken to is very happy to utilise the infrastructure we have in place.
Thank you, Minister. I believe it's your Chief Minister, Leah Finocchiaro, who said that the Port of Darwin should return to Australian hands, and then has now been dealing with a US potential buyer. Further on to that, Mr. Chair, to the Minister, how do you expect to maintain respectful and productive relationship with our neighbours in China, who billions of dollars of trade money to the country, when the CLP has now labelled their involvement in the critical infrastructure of the port as a security threat? Is this not a direct insult to that major trading partner, the country of China?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. As you would be aware, the port is overseen by the Department of Logistics and Infrastructure. You really should have addressed the question to the responsible minister at the time you had that opportunity.
Thank you, Minister. I believe you are the Minister for Trade, Business and Asian Relations. I believe that China is in Asia, so henceforth I'm asking you about the relationship with China and Asian relations around the port.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. As I said in my previous answer, all of my interactions with colleagues, including China, have been very positive.
Thank you. Let's hope they listen to you and not the Chief Minister. Through the Chair, Minister, given that your own party negotiated the original Port Darwin deal to lease it, do you accept responsibility for the damage that has now been done with our international partners, particularly in Asia, and the trade reputation? And that's why your damage repair is now part of your work with the relationship with the Southeast Asian neighbours and the sudden reversal that has been seen by the CLP government on the agreement, and they're looking for another leasee.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. As I said previously, really, if you wanted to interrogate this question, you should have done so with the relevant minister. What I will say, as I said before, all of my interactions with all of the Asian neighbours, including the recent visit with the Chinese ambassador, have been very positive, and they are very interested in doing business with the Northern Territory.
Thanks, Minister. It's strange that the Minister for Trade, Business and Asian Relations is not the Minister to speak about Asian trade and relations. Through the Chair, Minister, is it a standard CLP foreign policy to ink multi-million-dollar deals with foreign powers one day, then vilify them for political gain the next? And what impact does this have on the Northern Territory's ability to be an attraction, or a place of attracting and investing in long-term investment for our Asian neighbours in your portfolio of Asian relations?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. I think the greatest damage that was done with the Northern Territory's relationships between our Asian neighbours and the Northern Territory occurred back in 2016, when the previous Labor Chief Minister, Michael Gunner, slammed the door shut in their face and said, "We no longer want to do business with you." What I said earlier in my opening statement stands. We have worked very hard to re-engage with our Asian neighbours across the sector, and they have welcomed us with open arms. They are very willing to do business with us. They understand the Territory is a place to do business with, and that is all I have to say on the matter.
Thank you, Minister. And through the Chair, obviously just trying to rewrite history of things that didn't actually happen there with that insinuation, which will go past because I do respect the Minister is in a difficult position trying to defend her portfolio and the actions of her government, which are
Leader
obviously
of the
at
Opposition, do
loggerheads.
we have a question, please?
Thank you. I've asked the questions, didn't get all the answers I wanted, but I've asked them. Thank you.
That concludes consideration of agency-related whole government questions on budget and fiscal strategies. The committee will now consider Output Group 1, Trade, Business and Asian Relations. Output 1.1, Business. Are there any questions? No questions? Thank you. The committee will now move on to Output 1.2, Workforce and Population. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Chair, and to the Minister. How many people have moved to the Territory since August 2024 versus how many Territorians have left since August 2024?
Thank you for the question, Leader of the Opposition. As you'd be aware, we haven't got to the end of the reporting period. We're almost there, but not quite there. So those numbers, we don't have comparative data yet, but if you would like, we can take that on notice. But it won't be until after the end of the financial year.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to put that on notice for the end of financial year data that the Minister has offered.
Okay. Sorry. Leader of the Opposition, please restate the question for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, how many people have moved to the Territory since August 2024 versus how many Territorians or how many people have left the Territory since August 2024?
Minister, do you accept the question?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'll need to do it as a full financial year. Are you okay with that?
Accept the question?
With that adjustment, yes.
Well, in that case, I'll ask the Leader of the Opposition to please restate the question for the record with the
Thank you. Sorry, to Hansard. Minister, how many people have moved to the Territory since the start of the financial year versus how many Territorians have left since the end of financial year?
Minister, do you accept the question?
Yes.
Okay. The question asked by the Leader of the Opposition of the Minister has been allocated to number 8.2. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, has the government developed a new plan for growing the population here in the Territory, or is it still pursuing the population strategy that was released by the previous government in 2018?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. The entire approach to rebuilding our economy, restoring our lifestyle, reducing crime constitutes the basis for our growing the population. We create an environment where it's easy to do business. We create an environment where people feel safe in their homes. We create an environment where people are comfortable and able to enjoy the fabulous Territory lifestyle. They will come to us. We create an environment where it's the red tape is reduced. We provide incentives, encouraging people to move here. The homegrown homeowner grant scheme is a really good example of that. Everything we're doing is designed to grow the Territory population. The work that we're doing in skilled migration, similarly, contributes to that. The work that we've done with the 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙎, the work we're doing in the international education space and encouraging people to not go to the east coast of Australia for their tertiary education if they're coming in from overseas, but coming to an environment where they are welcomed with open arms, where they are well supported and where they have very strong representation of their community and cultural groups. All of this is part of our growing the population strategy.
Thank you, Minister. The Treasurer stated that your government will grow the Territory population by 4,000 people per year. That was in the ABC, reported by the ABC on the 9th of April 2025. Minister, what new initiatives or programs have been funded in this budget to meet this target under your portfolio?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Essentially what we've done is we know that we have a skill deficit in the Northern Territory, as we do across the country. We know that one of the best ways we can actually attract and grow people is to create the employment pathways and education pathways. So we have actually invested in the workforce strategy and the workforce attraction area to the tune of $2 million per year for 2 years. That will be, we've already seen some fantastic uptake of the opportunities to learn about the Territory through our innovative approach to recruiting from overseas through our online forums, where we had 2,000 people registered to participate in the online forums in Ireland. We also have the UK and South Africa, sorry, I had to get my Africas right. And we're also working very hard we've increased the number of the General Skill Migration program. The other thing that we're doing is making sure that we are supporting businesses to be able to actually attract the workforce in, but very much focused on selling the Territory as the place to come and live and work and have your family and stay. And that investment, we believe, over the next 2 years will actually have a significant impact on growing the population.
Thank you, Minister. Through the Chair, the Treasurer said your government is going to move more fly-in, fly-out or FIFO workers from gas and mineral sector to settle here in the Northern Territory. Minister, what are you doing specifically to get those companies to scrap FIFO work in the Territory and put down long-term roots?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. You're absolutely right. If we want to grow the Territory, one of the things we have to do is look at why businesses felt that FIFO was the response and not bring people here, have them live here, have their families here, have them commit to being part of the Northern Territory community. And I think that there was a significant opportunity lost under previous governments to actually instill that approach into those enterprises, particularly if we look at Impex. The fact that Impex were able to build their entire facility in the Northern Territory and there was nothing done to convince them that they needed to have their head office here, again, is one of those things that I find truly baffling. So every business that we're talking to, when we're talking in the investment space, we are making it very clear local is key. And local does not mean having a call centre where somebody answers the phone and then transfers the call to your head office in another part of the state, in another part of the country. So we are having those very robust discussions with those enterprises that are looking to invest in the Territory, are making very clear that it is not a matter of just conveniently locating your industry here and then flying your workforce in and out. You're right, the number of FIFOs that are coming in and out is way too high. We absolutely accept that there will be occasions for highly skilled workforces where that may not be practical, but when we're talking about growing the workforce, where we're talking about growing the population, it's an absolutely critical component and it's front and centre of all the discussions that we're having, and that will be a major target for us to actually, even businesses who are currently here, who don't have their head offices here, we are working to convince them that they need to change that.
Thank you, Minister. Through the Chair, Minister, the target set at the 4,000 people per year and the growth of the population of the Northern Territory, who exactly is responsible in the government for delivering that target, and what happens if they don't reach that target?
Thank you, Leader for the Opposition. It's a cross-government responsibility. Every minister, every MLA, every department, every person who lives and works in the Territory already, that is our driving factor. We all live here for a reason, because we believe this is the best place in the country to live. And so we will all work together to drive that. So clearly the Department of Trade, Business and Asian Relation, and me as having the portfolio of international education, migration and population, I have an absolute total commitment to seeing that happen. But all of my colleagues feel exactly the same way, and we are working very hard to promote that the Territory is the place to come and live and work. It's the place to come and invest. it's the place to come and study. And we are working with organisations such as Charles Darwin University to make sure that they are actually able to realise their potential by ensuring that the federal government does not restrict the number of students that they can take on board into the beautiful new campus that's been constructed in the city. They're able to accommodate 8,000 students. Just imagine if half of those decide, oh, target reached, 4,000 people, there you go. Maybe double, because maybe they'll have their families with them as well. So we're all working together to make this happen. We are all committed to doing this, and we will be held to account by the Territory population.
Thank you, Minister. So in short, you will take the responsibility for reaching that target?
As I said, Leader of the Opposition, it is a joint effort, and I will drive my colleagues as hard as I have to see that we realise that effort.
Excellent. Thank you. We look forward to asking you for the numbers this time next year in estimates. Minister, in regards to the record interstate departures, which your government has often talked about, the declining birth rates and little to no regional infrastructure investment seen in this CLP's first budget, is this target seriously achievable, or should Territorians prepare for yet another black flip on the target numbers?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. So as I've already indicated, the skilled migration process will be a significant component of growing our population. We've been allocated 1,600 general skilled migration nominations for 24-25. That then carries forward obviously into 25-26. Critical to that is the federal government does its part, and that means that they've allocated those places to us, so they absolutely must process those visas applications in a timely fashion. We know that that's been a struggle for them in the past, and I've been very fortunate to be able to have some discussions with the Assistant Minister for Migration, Matt Thistlethwaite, around that, and he's committed to ensuring that his department does actually see those visa applications progressed. With that 1,600 people, that's about 3,000 people potentially in the population. So there you are. Before you do anything else, that skilled migration will actually see a lift and an uptake in our population. The other thing that we're doing is we have a significant push into not just into the international sector, but interstate. Anybody who's living down south at the moment in their -5 woolly underwear conditions and are looking to the Territory and the magnificent weather that we've got right now, we've got a really big push happening about encouraging, particularly in those workforce shortage areas that we know that we desperately need to ensure that our industry continues to grow, to convince the people living in chilly Victoria or chilly New South Wales that the Territory is the place that they could come and live and work and enjoy a beautiful lifestyle. We'll give them a grant for their new home. We'll actually work and make sure that they can take their weekend trips to Bali and enjoy the magnificent lifestyle that the Territory has to offer. And so that hopefully will pick up the other 1,000.
Oh, sorry. So, Member for Blaine, you have a question on 1.2?
Yeah, population.
Member for Blaine.
Minister, in terms of population, have we started to see green shoots yet of population starting to recover after the disastrous policies of the last 8 years?
Thank you, Member for Blaine. I believe I can say yes, we are starting to see those green shoots poke their way through the frozen earth. That's not frozen because we're in the Territory.
Baked clay.
The red clay, because there's a very real sense that the work that's been done to reduce antisocial behaviour, to actually make people feel that they can bring their families to live and to work in the Northern Territory, the opportunities that we're seeing, the business support that we're seeing. The Chief Minister recently spoke about the fact that we've had a 48% uptake in new home building applications. That tells us that something is moving in the right direction. So yes, those green shoots are there. They are fragile and we will continue to nurture them, but I believe that we are seeing that shift come through.
Thank you.
No further questions on 1.2? Okay, that concludes consideration of output 1.2. The committee will now consider output 1.3, trade and investment. Are there any questions?
Sorry, excuse me, Chair. I just need to, the question on notice around the population in and out, we've just had clarification that most of those numbers won't be available until December. So just to let you know that the way that information is gathered and reported, yeah. So
Which question is it?
that was the question on notice in relation to the population into the departures and the incomings.
They'll be on notice for a while.
They'll be on notice for a while. It'll be, you could consider it a Christmas present.
So, Leader of the Opposition, did you want to take that question off the list or?
Take that as the answer.
Or take that as the answer?
We might just leave it on, but we might submit it as a formal written question, then we'll remove it through the committee.
You can't remove it once it's been taken. It'll be on there, and if it doesn't get answered by the due date for answers, it will just go unanswered.
That's all right, then we'll just write again. Thank you. Don't want it to be forgotten, it's very important.
Okay, so the question stands?
Yeah.
Okay. Blaine?
Sorry, I was waiting to see if the opposition had any questions. So I have a question on trade and investment. Minister, what measures is this government taking to strengthen local content in procurement? I know the member for Karama is very passionate about local content. So
I think
sure
the
you'd like
minister's
to hear
already
the answer.
answered that.
Thank you, Member for Blaine. So you're absolutely right. If you want people to invest in business, grow their businesses, look at the opportunities, you need to make sure that there's clarity and a good, robust system that goes hand in hand with that. So in the lead up to the election, just generally talking to businesses and hearing their concerns about trying to do business in the Territory and how complicated they felt that it had gotten. And again, perception is often everything. When being appointed to this portfolio, I made it my business to get out and talk to businesses on the ground. We've had a number of roundtable discussions specifically on procurement and business more generally to get a sense from people what they thought the challenges were. And the consistent message across all of the businesses that we talked to, big, small, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, right across the board, was they really felt that that local focus had been lost. And lots of people were concerned that the local content wasn't being followed through on well enough. So we've undertaken a review of the procurement space to make sure that we really do have that very strong focus on local and we get really good clarity for people about what they need to do to secure business in, particularly with the government, and to make sure that first and foremost, business must go to Territory businesses, and that if businesses isn't coming, particularly when you're talking about government interactions with business, that there has to be a really good reason, or there has to be something that's just cannot possibly be sourced within the Northern Territory or supplied within the Northern Territory. Only then will departments be able to go beyond the borders of the Northern Territory. And that work is still being undertaken. We've had a lot of consultation with business in that space. The feedback has been very robust and very clear about what their expectations are. And so we're also reviewing the various layers and the one-size-fits-all policy policy, because that doesn't really make sense. Anybody who's been involved in business knows that that's not true. So we really want to make it as simple as possible for local businesses to do business in the Northern Territory. We've also had the Red Task Tape Force have just handed down their report. There are a number of areas that they looked at in procurement which we have already addressed. So we're anticipating that that review and which hasn't been done. There hasn't been a review of procurement policies for the last almost 8-9 years. So it's overdue because the environment has changed significantly. So we're anticipating that that will be completed and the new procurement oversight will be in place by the end of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on output 1.3? No further questions. That concludes consideration of output 1.3 and output group 1. The committee will now proceed to output group 2, corporate and shared services, output 2.1, corporate and governance. Are there any questions? No questions. That concludes consideration of output 2.1. I'll now call for questions on output 2.2, shared services received. Are there any questions? No questions. That concludes consideration of output 2.2. I'll now call for questions on output 2.3, shared services provided. Are there any questions? No questions. That concludes consideration of output 2.3 and output group 2. The committee will now proceed to output 3, international education. I note that while this output sits with the Minister for Education and Training, who is responsible for the delivery of education services to international students in NT government schools, Minister Cahill is responsible for international education strategies. Are there any questions?
Yes,
Leader of the
Mr.
Opposition.
Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, the 2019-2025 International Education Training Strategy is due to finish at the end of this year. Minister, how many FTE are currently attributed to the development of a new strategy with your government?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. So there are currently 3 people who are working in the Study NT team who are looking at that strategy, which is a reasonably small component of the work that's being done in that space, because the good thing about a strategy is it drives the actual agenda, and the agenda is embedded very deeply in Study NT and the work that they do. So currently 3 people will be involved in that review.
Thank you. And just a final question on this one, Minister. What will be the process of consultation for the new strategy?
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. The early work has been completed and the terms of how that consultation will be undertaken is currently being formulated.
Member for Blaine.
Minister, acknowledging that you are responsible, you're not responsible for the delivery of education. Before being elected, I was working for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑 University, and so I have a deep understanding of the benefit of international students to that institution. And we were incredibly disheartened and shocked by the cuts to students that international students are allowed to come and study by the federal government. Do you have any updates on progression of negotiations to increase the quota for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑 University so that we can have international students coming back again?
Thank you, Member for Blaine. The good news is that whilst that cap is, well, the bad news is it's still on the table and still being discussed. At this moment in time, it's not being enforced. There is a tendency at the departmental level in terms of visa applications to view it as if it is enforced, but I have had the opportunity to meet with the Assistant Minister, Matt Thistlethwaite, on the issue, and he has given a commitment that he understands that regional universities and CDUs fall into that category, have a very different need than the situation that's occurred that led to the discussion of a cap on the East Coast. And he's very well aware that for the Charlestown University and for the Northern Territory more generally, the ability to actually bring those international students into our community is absolutely critical. They play a very important role and part in our economy. They play a very important part of our workforce, particularly in the hospitality industry. And so I'm actually looking to catch up with him again in the next couple of weeks to actually see where we're sitting with that, so that we hopefully can bed down that cap won't be implemented in the way they intended, and we actually get a little bit more movement. We were able to actually get some increase in the original concept, but we're hoping we can actually have it removed altogether.
That would be fantastic. Thank you, Minister.
Minister, speaking as the member for Kerama, I'm actually a very passionate supporter, as you know, of international education, particularly around the vocational education and training space. Can you give us an understanding of, from your agency's perspective and your own perspective, what are the priority markets we might be targeting, and also what sectors will we be targeting to get more international students here?
Thank you, Member for Kerama. So for Study NT in 24-25, and they drive the agenda in this space, the ideal, the markets for us, particularly in that international student education, both within Charlestown University and the private advanced education training sector, include India, Nepal, China, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, Bangladesh, Colombia and Brazil. And we're finding we're getting a lot of interest from those areas. Our greatest advocates in this space are our Study NT ambassadors. They are very proactive in speaking to their contacts back home who are considering coming to Australia to study and hopefully live and work beyond their study time, and persuading them that going to Sydney and Melbourne is not the optimal place for them, that the Northern Territory feels more like home, and the work opportunities are significant. So I think the last stats I saw were there was around about 98% of the students who complete their training are able to find a position and continue to work in the Territory economy for a period of time. They all contribute significantly to the economy, so I think that's a workforce we need to build upon. The areas obviously that really benefit from this sector are healthcare, hospitality. We also, I think, in the accounting sector, we have a really good profile, and also the IT sector, which I think the member for Blaine would have experienced in his time at the university as well.
And just follow up, Minister, we can often do marketing by going overseas, but it's also getting people here, international agents, to come here. Can you update us on any progress you've made in that regard?
Thank you again, Member for Kerama. Yes, we've had 3 familiarisation tours undertaken with education agents throughout Darwin, where we've showcased what the educational offerings are. And I've also, in the travel that I've done, education and skills exchanges have rated very highly in the discussions, particularly with the Indonesian government. We also had, we've had the Australian International Education Conference in Melbourne, where the department had a very strong presence, and they also attended the ICEF ANZA Trade Fair, which was held in the Gold Coast in April. So every opportunity that we possibly can, we are actually out there talking to agents and encouraging them to consider that the Northern Territory is a place where they should be guiding the international student population to come to. We have lots to offer those students, and I think probably the greatest message that we can give in that space is that the students that we talk to who are advocating for us say that they arrive in the Territory and they feel like they're home because it's a very familiar environment to them. And the fact that it's a smaller environment means that they're welcomed into the community much more strongly. And so that's a message we're selling to the education agents as well, because they need to understand that if they're recommending people come to live and work in the Northern Territory, that they can do it very confidently.
Thank you, Minister. Any further questions? No? That concludes consideration of output 3. This now concludes consideration of outputs relating to the Department of Trade, Business and Asian Relations. On behalf of the committee, I thank the departmental officers that provided advice to the Minister today. Minister, would you like to say anything in closing?
Thank you, Chair. I would just again like to thank the team from the department who have worked extremely hard to ensure that we had the necessary information, the work that's been done on putting the budget together and looking to address to ensure that we can deliver for Territorians. So thank you to Kelly and I thought I pushed the button. Sorry, let me try that again.
Yeah.
I just want to say a big thank you to the team for all the work that they've done. They have worked really, really hard putting all this information together. Thank you to Kelly and to Hayley and to Joe for the work that they've undertaken. And there's been a lot of people behind the scenes who've actually worked very hard. This is a huge amount of work. It's to ensure that we know that we're delivering for Territorians, and I have absolute faith in this team to be able to do exactly that.
Thank you, Minister. The committee will now proceed to consider outputs relating to the Department of Children and Families, and we'll give a couple of minutes to swap over any staff.